We are now jumping into our main session. And so for those just joining, welcome, good morning. We are going to be talking more on pandemic pets and tips on how to help them and how to help us and make sure everybody's happy, starting to leave the home more. So that's what we're going to continue talking about today. So if you did just join, you didn't miss anything, thank you so much. Wanted to get started here in the next minute. Want to put a little reminder out there that if you have any questions during this session, please go ahead and use that Q&A function. It's at the bottom part of your Zoom toolbar. If you just wanted to give us a quick hello, we'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and use that chat feature. And other than that, we will get started right in our conversation. I want to introduce to you Joan Morris. She is our garden writer and columnist. So Joan, please go right ahead.
Thanks, Erin, and welcome to everyone joining us for our 10 o'clock session. As Erin said, I am a garden writer and I'm also the Pets and Wildlife columnist. I just celebrated my 33rd year with the newspaper, which is just astounding to me. I kind of tend to think of myself as being in my 30s, but so that was kind of a rude awakening. But I also have a dog named Bailey, a little Chihuahua, who is hopefully going to be good during this session, and I won't have to mute myself when he starts barking if the trash guy is coming by. But anyway, we are going to talk about pandemic pets and some of the issues that may come up now that we're all freed to go out of our houses more often, go back to the workplace. Joining us today are three very delightful and intelligent women with vast experience with animals. We have Maria Eguren from Peninsula Humane Society, right? Yep.
Correct. Yes.
We have Nancy Frensley with Berkeley Humane and Michelle Suarez with Humane Society Silicon Valley. So let's start with Maria. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us some about your background?
Sure. So I'm from Argentina originally, so I studied biology over there. And once I graduated, I knew I wanted to work in the behavior world, animal behavior. So I worked a lot with animals at the zoos in Argentina, in the US, in Chicago, in the Bay Area, and always working on enrichment and play behavior and trying to give them a better life over there. And then about 18 years ago, I moved from the wild animals to the domestic animals, and I started working with cats and dogs here at Peninsula Humane Society. I basically started with a very, very tiny behavior department. I was the behavior department when I joined this group, and now we have a big group that works with me. I lead the behavior department. We work with the animals at the shelter, getting them ready to go up for adoption, but we also work with the public, and I do one-on-one training, one-on-one behavior consultations, and group classes also. So I'm very, very happy to be here and to help people try and have the best relationship possible with their companion animals.
Great. And Nancy, tell us about yourself.
Okay, I've been with Berkeley Humane around 30 years and been with the training department for somewhere between 20 and 25. I've been involved in the shelter work, in intake, and evaluating animals, in doing shelter behavior, very heavily involved in shelter behavior. And that sort of evolved into, at one point, we had like one class a week. And at this time, we have probably a lot of classes, starting classes every day, multiple classes. I do the behavior advice line, and I also take private consults. So we're redeveloping now that COVID is getting to be over, and I'll get back 4 trainers that I had before. It's going to be very nice. Okay.
Very good. And Michelle, tell us your background.
So I've been in the animal welfare field for about 15 years now. I did start with a group called Bay Area Siberian Husky Rescue Group. After adopting my own sled team, I realized I was having so much fun training my own dogs that I needed to start looking into other animals to start training, because there's only so many that'll fit in your household. So I ended up working with, I've been working with the Humane Society Silicon Valley in the behavior department my entire time there now for 13 years, and also helping oversee some other areas in the organization. Right now, I am primarily overseeing the behavior and training team and the rescue department as well.
Right. Well, while we wait to get some questions, we have one, but I just want to talk a little bit about what people might expect to see from their animals if they're having issues adjusting to their alone time.
Well, generally, they're going to see their dog vocalizing, possibly chewing up things, possibly, thank you, Maria, eliminating the house, you know, and various behaviors like that. Just generally things that look like distress when they leave. And people don't always see that because they're gone. They come back and they see the results of it. So a lot of times dogs just do it because they're bored, and a lot of times they do it because they're distressed. It's a little hard to tell sometimes.
Yes, I like that you made that point, because we really need to figure out if it's because they don't have anything to do or they have a ton of energy, and like we were discussing earlier, you know, we don't give them anything and they decide to do something that it's usually not what we had in mind, or they are actually experiencing some distress because they have been left alone, right? And that's an important difference. And when the pet owners cannot figure it out, I would suggest contacting a professional, a trainer, a behaviorist, calling one of the shelters. We all have resources available for free, like the helpline, or booking someone to talk to you, or coming and bringing your pet. I think that's a great resource that not everybody knows it's out there. So contact your local shelter and ask for help, because most of them have a behavior department.
That is a great suggestion. A lot of times people put up with bad behavior or behavior they don't approve of because they're like, well, I can't afford a trainer or, you know, whatever. But yeah, shelters are an excellent resource, just not just for giving us our pets.
Yes.
So Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for animals with their routines changing is they're also trying to figure out why. And so the sooner that you can slowly transition them to their new routine, the easier it's going to be for them, because regardless of what type of animal that you have, most animals thrive on routine and getting regular, you know, mental enrichment, physical stimulation. And also most animals are really social. So they're going to start wondering where their people went. So watching out for now, observing them soon, what their body language looks like now before things start changing, and then keeping an eye on that, because their body language and how they interact can change as things start changing.
Great. Well, let's get into our questions. We have one from Susan. She has a cat, not a dog, and the cat meows a lot and likes to talk and get lots of attention. Wow. Is there anything I can do to keep her from meowing when I am back to work? Sometimes she will go into the hall and meow louder.
Well, it's a normal behavior. Okay, some cats are more vocal than others. I'll start off with that.
And
I would
another
say,
thing, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
I would also say is, how has the routine changed since going back to work? Like, you know, what does the schedule look like now? When are you feeding? When are you playing? Because cats, just like dogs, need mental and physical stimulation. And sometimes by being able to provide that, even before you go to work, can make a huge difference with how relaxed they are when you're not there.
And I think it's important to figure out the level of activity of that cat, the age. If the cat has always been a vocal cat, and like Nancy said, it's not going to disappear. It's probably just going to continue that way. But if it's a cat that normally was very quiet and now all of a sudden, because you're not there, needs a little bit more attention, then increasing the activities that you can leave for that cat, you can do before with the cat. I sent a picture with a couple of different ideas and toys that we could use, interactive toys with the animals. But for the cats, I think a good one is the cat wand, or playing with a toy that they can chase, and we can do that before we leave. And then hopefully they are going to rest and relax a little bit more. If it's because they are full of energy, then maybe that will tone down the vocalizations also, right?
Yes,
The other
and
thing is
any activity with a cat that you can hook into their hunting instinct hunting is quiet in cats.
absolutely. And the other thing that I look at too is, can you do the play first and then give them the breakfast? So then ultimately then that will then encourage them to then maybe take a nap afterwards. Because they're tired and they've got a full belly.
Okay, we have another question asking if it is safe to take a dog to daycare, doggy daycare, I assume, because of COVID.
I think if you check on the safety precautions that the daycare is taking, and if you're comfortable with that, yes. If there's someone that's immunocompromised in the house, I would definitely be more on the alert and make sure that if you think that the dog could bring something from the outside world into the house, you can wipe them down, get them used to getting in the house, and you use the puppy wipes, and you can just clean them a little bit or clean their paws before they come in the house. But my first thing would be to talk to the daycare you're considering and ask them, what precautions are they taking now with COVID? Are they doing anything different? And if you are satisfied with what they do, I don't see why not. It's going to help that dog.
I know that early on in the pandemic, there was a fear that we could get COVID through our animals, through our pets. But I think that is pretty much was disproven. There was a couple of instances when an animal, a dog, contracted COVID, but there was no transference to humans. And I think it'd be very rare for the pet to actually get COVID. Another question, looking for tips in getting cats used to having visitors in the home, especially kittens who were born during the pandemic.
What are they doing?
She doesn't say, but I imagine they're like running away and avoiding.
Yeah, well, avoidance behavior, or else they're, your kittens are biting the ankles of your guests, chasing their feet. Depends on what they're doing. But again, I would really go with more of a procedure that I recommend getting dogs used to people coming in, is have the cat confined away from the entryway, let everything settle down, and then let the cat in when the more exciting part of that event is over.
And one thing we could add would be maybe provide them with a hiding place that's in the area or in the room where you want them to be. And the hiding place doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be a little tunnel. Now that we are getting a ton of deliveries, keep one of those cardboard boxes, cut a hole, and that makes a great hiding place and safe spot for the cats where they can take a peek and check the guest. And if they are comfortable, eventually they can come out. And if not, they can hide over there. Just give them different areas where they can feel comfortable and secure, right? Maybe what I've seen in many, many cats is when someone comes in the house, they disappear. And that's it. They are gone until, for 2-3 hours or who knows how long. So you don't have to force them to be out there if they are uncomfortable. Maybe it's a cat that's not super social with people that they don't know. But if they have different areas where they can be hiding and watching, and maybe that's kind of a start for an interaction with a guest, that might let them wander around the house and not be secluded in a room or a closet for the rest of the day, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is making sure you're not forcing your cats to interact with the visitors and trying to make the visitors being there as positive as possible. So the extra exciting treats come out, or wand play comes out, and it's all about visitors being there is a positive thing. And then slowly allowing them to get comfortable with visitors being there before expecting that they're going to interact with the visitors. And like Maria and Nancy already said, giving them plenty of places that they can kind of check things out, but still feel safe if they feel like they need a retreat if it's too much for them.
Great. I have a question from Janet. It says, we have 3 dogs, 2 older siblings and 1 youngster. The younger dog barks and howls when he hears the key in the lock when we leave. We feel terrible for him. Any suggestions for this?
Okay, I would say, first of all, don't feel terrible. Okay, this is a normal, natural thing that's happening. And I just, ethologically speaking, these behaviors are built in. They're built into puppies and kittens of all kinds. Vocalizing, it allows your parent to come and find you if you're lost. Okay, it keeps you close to the den. So that's sort of the basis of why all this happens. So you, again, one of the things I like to do is take a little handful of treats or a toy if you've got a really toy-oriented dog. And before I leave, I toss a little handful of treats away from the door, go out, and you can do a lot of different fake departures that way, so that your dog starts to go, oh, something's going to be in that other direction. It takes their focus off the door and can be very helpful.
Yeah, my dog has learned early last year, one of my sisters who lived with me got very ill, and I was away from the house a lot with her. And so my dog started peeing in the house, even though my other sister was here. So we started, whenever I'd let him out and he would pee, he would get a treat. And he's very food focused. So that took care of the peeing in the house, but it created the other problem of that. Now he just goes outside, hikes his leg, does nothing, comes back in and wants to eat. So we're working on that one now. Here's a question from Thomas who asks, how do you slowly prepare your dog for almost not being alone to being alone for several hours? I think you covered some of this, but maybe go over the main point.
I would start leaving the dog for little bits at a time now. And it depends on the dog's personality, right? Some dogs might only tolerate a few seconds at a time at the very, very beginning. Some dogs could tolerate a little longer. So I would exercise before, so the dogs are going to be tired, hopefully rest for some of the time. Teach them how to play with any of the interactive toys that you can leave them with, a Kong. There's little toys that they, like a puzzle feeder, they can roll and treats come out. or they have to open doors to get the treats. There's other toys that I really like for the dogs that are not that crafty, if you want, into searching, or they don't want to use their nose that much, which are little robots that you can activate, and they dispense treats as they are moving around the house. So the dog has to be following and getting the treats out. So teach them how to do all of those things. And then start by leaving the room where your dog is while they are doing this. And maybe you go prepare a cup of coffee and you are not glued to your dog. Many of the dogs that are Velcro dogs that will follow you from room to room, they need to start learning to stay in the one room while you do other things. You go take a shower, the dog is not at the door, right? You put a baby gate if necessary in the room where the dog is, give them something to do and go take a shower. And you start little like that. And then you can slowly transition to leaving the house, going around the block and coming back, or going to the yard and coming inside again, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and one solution that actually helps alleviate your stress, there are a lot of different pet cams that are treat dispensing pet cams available that you can connect with your phone. So that would allow you to not only call your dog once you train it, call your dog to the pet cam and deliver a treat, and allows you to check on what's going on during the day.
Absolutely, because sometimes I think we're more stressed about leaving them alone than they are about us leaving in some situations. So the cam works both ways. You can see that they're comfortable, and then we're comfortable seeing that they're comfortable and relaxed.
Great. Here's a question from Vicky. I went on vacation for a week and got lots of barking notification from my Furbo camera. Saw that my pups were barking and howling. I had a pet sitter come into my house several times a day. Any recommendations for the next time?
I mean, the biggest thing, if it's at all possible to, if you have a routine established for your pets, having your pet sitter follow that same routine. So they know, when breakfast is, when dinner time is, when their potty breaks are going to be, when the playtime is. Sometimes when things are a little off schedule, it can definitely cause some distress in the animals.
Yes, and it occurred to me, Michelle, that also, I've been feeding my dogs around noon and in the evening, but if I'm going to leave for all day, I may need to change that feeding schedule so my dogs are fed, they're exercised and fed in the morning, happy, sleepy, full tummy, and then they have to wait all day, because otherwise dogs have a little internal clock and they go, oh, it's 12 o'clock and I haven't been fed, right? So if you change that before you go back to work, that may be very helpful.
That's so true. That's so true. My dog, he's 13 now, but if I miss the time when either I'm supposed to leave the office, if I delay it for half an hour, or when he gets his potty break, even if he doesn't have to go, he's already looking at me. It's like, this is the time you need to take me. If let's say I'm here today, he would be under the desk looking at me like, it's time to go out. It's time to go out. So they do know, they have their little clock.
And they also get used to where you leave them. My dogs, because I have multiple, have different spots where they have to stay to get their enrichment item where I leave them with. And if it's a day and they're not sure if I'm going to go to work or not, or if it's dinner time, they go to their crate or their spot and they're waiting. I'm like, where did everyone go? And they're waiting for me to give them their special treat because they think I'm going to leave them alone.
Yeah, and place training is so valuable. Very trendy now. You can see all sorts of videos on YouTube of platform training. Boy, you get a little Cato board or a dog platform, and maybe you have 2 or 3 of those. Placement training is really good for this.
So Kathy asked, we're going on vacation next month for a week, and we will need to board our 13-year-old Chihuahua, who is very attached. She's been to the boarding place many times, but of course it's been more than a year since her last visit. She tends to have a bit of separation anxiety. I was thinking of sending her for daycare a few times before we leave to allow her to refamiliarize herself with boarding. Do you have any other advice to help ease the transition?
I really like that idea. I think it's a great thing to do. If the Chihuahua hasn't been there for a long time, yes, go get her comfortable again with the place, with the people working there, start making that her little routine. Depending on what happens during the day, I would pass some information in terms of when the dog has food, when the dog sleeps, what kind of toys the dog likes. And I think most places will allow you to bring your own stuff. Try to bring maybe a blanket or a bed that your dog uses at home that has her scent. So hopefully that will help her acclimate when she's there at the daycare, and make it a little bit more like homey for her, and it's not a completely new place.
Okay. This next question is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's from Catherine, who asked, any suggestions about fireworks? One of my dogs is terrified. She has a covered crate that is her secure place. I leave a fan on, etc. She can go in and out of the crate. I can premedicate at 4th of July with Benadryl or with CBD oil. But in Antioch, fireworks go off every day, day and night. Boy, do they. My dogs are well behaved when I am gone for a few hours, but sometimes they are anxious when I come home because fireworks have gone off and I wasn't home. So apparently banning fireworks does not really do anything, but what can we do for our dogs who are absolutely terrified?
This is a really tough one, you know. Depends on the degree of sound sensitivity, but a dog that is really sound sensitive and shuts down and drools and shivers and does all that, I honestly would probably direct a client to a veterinary behaviorist to look at long-term medication for that level.
Yeah, I have the same issue around my house, and I have one dog that does not like fireworks. So when I have to leave her at home, I do the same thing that she's already been doing. I find the place in the household where you can least hear the sound, and I play a lot of white noise, whether it's music or something else, and leave it on throughout the day, knowing that the fireworks might go off before I get home. And as it gets closer, it gets worse. So what I've done is actually, I've asked my friend who lives in an area where the fireworks aren't as present and loud. And my dog goes and spends a couple of days with her during the worst time of the season. Cause it feels like my neighbors celebrate everything around here with fireworks. So I have to be careful and ensure that, that dog stays somewhere where they don't get impacted. But as the 4th of July approaches, it's just like it's a warm up to the 4th of July, it sounds like around here. And so they're constantly going off. So I look, where else can I put her so she does not get distressed during this time of the year. And so I'm lucky that I have my friend's house that doesn't have that noise, but other things to consider is, daycare and boarding. Can the dog go and hang out at a daycare and boarding facility that isn't as impacted by the noises? Because for the most part, hopefully it's just temporary time of the season and getting your dog through that. Because of the rest of the year, it's the one-offs that, you're leaving your dog alone for that.
Yeah, and definitely the white noise generator, not just a radio, but a real white noise generator, which you can buy. They're very inexpensive, can really be helpful for milder cases of thunderphobia.
Yeah, with my dog, he just goes in absolute panic. It's the most tragic thing you've ever seen. And I could deal with it for one night because I'm medicating, which I don't like to do, but having spent sleepless hours with him shivering and trying to sit on top of my head and pacing and drooling and panting, But they don't do it just one night. They do it on the second and on the third and on the
Yep.
fourth and on the fifth. Just terrible. But anyway, I'm against fireworks. At least the last one.
Absolutely.
Here's a question. It says, I have a 1-year-old dog who poops every time I leave her alone. It does not matter if she has just gone potty outside, and it does not matter how long I am gone. She will even poop if I leave for 5 minutes. Do you have any suggestions? She used to go on a potty pad, but now she just shreds the potty pad and poops on the floor.
Yeah, and that's one of the signs that I take seriously if it happens a lot. And not just that, right? But if you know the dog has had the opportunities to go to the bathroom, has gone to the bathroom at the right times, and then you still keep having accidents in the house every time you leave, I would look for also other physical signs, like is the dog panting heavily, is the dog drooling a lot? Because what happens when the dogs pee or poop because of the separation distress is because they cannot control their physiological functions, right? So that's a level of stress that's higher than just the, grabbing things and maybe shredding the pee pad or stuff like that. So that tells me if that's really the reason why, and it's not because, they didn't have enough time or they didn't have their potty break, we should start looking at, do we need to see someone to help us with this? Do we need anything else in addition to the training or, the increased activity, which I would do everything we have been discussing so far, increase the activity, try to leave some enrichment, try to leave music on, anything that's going to help the dogs relax a little bit more when they are alone. But if that's still happening, and you come back to having accidents in the house, maybe it's time to see someone else that can help, and because that might be something that the dog cannot control.
Okay. Another question says, since the COVID restrictions are mostly lifted, will the shelter soon allow visitors to drop in to view animals that they might want to possibly adopt? Currently, it seems most shelters require you to submit an online adoption form ahead of time, get approved, and then finally meet the pet. So what's happening at your shelter?
At my shelter, we've already started to do in-person adoptions. So we're currently in the morning from like 10 to 1, asking people to come in if they would like to adopt a canine, whether it's a puppy or an adult dog. And then from 2 to 5, we are doing in-person adoptions for felines. You don't need to make an appointment, but know that there may be a line to get in.
Yes, and Berkeley Humane is doing adoptions by appointment now.
And we are doing both. We have been doing mostly by appointments, but we have started a while ago opening up for drop-ins during a period of time during the day. Usually, I think it's during the afternoon or 11 or noon. That's when we open to drop-ins. If you want to come earlier, you have to make an appointment. And the numbers are kind of limited. We don't want to have 100 people all together on the adoption floor, right? But usually we have someone at the door, and if it's too full inside, they will ask people to wait outside, but you can come and check animals without an appointment.
And fingers crossed, this should just continue to keep improving and getting back to normal.
Yes.
Susan says, toys and treats are great, but how do you handle multiple dogs when one steals the toys and treats from the others?
So one thing to consider is separate confinement areas. So that way each dog has its own toys and treats.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, because you can also, by doing that, eliminate any potential tension building up between the 2 or 3 dogs. You don't want one to be always the winner and the others add stress to their being alone. Now they are stressed because there's the one dog that keeps bullying them to get the toys or the treats, right?
Yeah. That, and when I first got my dogs, I actually would put the bowls around and they would rotate eating bowls. I didn't have the issue with resource guarding, luckily, but they rotated eating the bowls, and I ended up with one skinny dog and one really chunky dog. And so my reason for actually putting them in different areas was so that I could actually know what type of food consumption each one was having and ensuring they were eating enough and not too much.
Now you can create separate areas with child gates,
Mhm.
so that one part of the house belongs to X and the other part of the house belongs to Y, and they have their toys and their treats, and then they can be all together when the family's home.
Okay, Angie asks, my dog has been crate trained, but with people always home due to COVID, his crate has not been used much, so he is no longer a fan. How do I retrain so that the crate is not a bad thing or a sign that they are leaving?
Starting to play games with the crate again and starting to make sure that rewards happen. Good stuff happen when he is in the crate. So he gets fed in the crate. You play find it where they run into the crate. He gets a special chewy when he's in the crate. So reintroducing the crate in a positive way.
Yes, and besides the games, I like adding a sit in the crate before being able to come out, because what happens is when dogs are getting ready to come out of the crate, they feel very, excited. Oh, yes. So you make that a little less exciting and put them back in their front brain, their thinking mode, by saying, okay, sit, they get a treat inside the crate, then the door opens and they come out. So they're calmer when they come out of the crate.
Okay, this is from Jay. Do you recommend using automatic pet feeders and pet water fountains while the human is away? Are they good products to feed the cats and dogs automatically, remotely? And any brands that you would recommend?
Well, my personal preference, honest, is trying to figure out how to make your animal work for the food. So finding interactive ways that they can get to the food. Sometimes if you're not going to be around and you can't provide those interactive toy options for them to eat out of, then definitely an interactive feeder, as long as your animal isn't afraid of the noise that it might make.
And the cats really enjoy having the fresh water. Some cats don't care that much, but others will not even touch the water bowl and go to, the tap or anywhere where they can have the fresh water. So the fountains are good for that.
Tina says we are crate training our puppy, and she had a couple of instances of separation anxiety in the crate early on. She's now 1 year old, and she's able to stay alone and relaxed in the crate for 2 hours and outside the crate for 4 hours. Can you discuss the pros and cons of keeping up crate training at this point? Oh, and she adds that she has no problem sleeping in the crate overnight around 8 hours.
Well, I'm a big proponent of maintaining your crate training. Having been a person whose engine blew up in a place where the only motel didn't allow pets, I was able, because my dogs were crate trained, to convince the people to let me stay there because my dogs were in crates inside the motel room. It's good for travel, it's good for everything. And I also would like to address more people are taking their dogs to the office, right? And having a little crate or having a crate for your dog in your space allows everybody who comes into your space to be comfortable. Crate training is absolutely essential for the life of our modern dogs, I think.
Huh. So you don't see any cons in her continuing the crate?
Ooh.
Good. Do any of you have experience? Oh, I think this is a repeat of one that we just answered. but let me go through it. Do any of you have experienced automatic pet feeders or pet water fountains? Any drawbacks or benefits? It should be a good solution to feed the pets and keep them hydrated while the human is away, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I'm not seeing any more questions, so, oh, yeah, here's one. If you have a 2-story house, is it a good idea to have a crate on each floor when you're trying to housebreak a puppy? Or just have a doggy bed on the first floor, since ideally she would sleep upstairs in the crate in our bedroom?
Well, when you are planning on, crate training your puppy, having one on each level wherever the dog is going to be crated would really be valuable.
Yeah, and if you are, what I like of that situation is getting the puppy used to going up and down the stairs, not when the puppy wants, but when we are ready for that. So I like to use the baby gates, so you can confine the puppy to a specific area of the house, but use the stairs to your advantage to teach them that stairs are not scary, right? Because at some point you might need that. And then they can practice, and it's a good way of exercising also. You can use the up and down the stairs, throwing a ball or stuff like that. But yeah, the crates to keep them downstairs or upstairs are a good solution.
I don't really ever hear people talking about crate training or form of such for cats. Do they do that? And is it a good idea?
Absolutely. Because you don't want the only time you put your cat in a crate to be when they go to the vets. It'll be easier to get your cat in the crate when you do have to go to the vet's office, if you do crate training and you get them comfortable with going in the crate and doing the same thing that you would do with the dog, playing games around the crate. Fun things happen when they go in the crate. It's a safe place to go and hang out as well.
Yeah, and one thing you can do with cats, well, you could do it with dogs as well. If you have the plastic crates, you can take the top off the crate and start training the dog to just bed down in that space before you actually put the top on and confine them.
Okay. This is a question I've heard people ask before, and I've wondered the answer to. Would getting another dog as a companion help ease separation issues with their current dog? So it's 2 more fun than 1.
Yeah, when people ask me that, I usually say, do you want a second dog first? Because I do not recommend getting a dog for your dog if you don't want 2 dogs. That's not going to be a good solution. But that said, it depends on the dog. Some dogs will feel a little more relaxed if they have a friend over there, but some other dogs really, the stress that they feel is because their person left. So it doesn't matter if you have the other dog with them, they still will be wanting the person there. So that might not fix the problem. Usually when people don't know what to do or want to test this, I would suggest fostering another dog and see how it goes. See if you can deal with living with 2 dogs. Your dog likes having another dog in the house. Does it solve the problems that you're having with the distress when the dog is alone? And if it doesn't, or you realize it's too much work, then maybe this is not the way to go. That's much easier, and you'll be helping a shelter and a dog in need to find, a temporary home until they find their permanent home, and you can answer all your questions that way. And then you can make a decision if you really like. I've seen a lot of times the fosters end up adopting those dogs, but it's a nice transition.
Mhm.
Yeah, I completely agree with Maria. Fostering allows you not only to ensure that you're getting a good match for your family, but also a good match for your dog, and that your dog is going to be comfortable sharing its household with another dog.
Yeah, and one thing to consider, which is a little bit of a con rather than a pro, is that your new dog might be likely to pick up cues from your older dog rather than the other way around. So again, that compatibility, that those personalities have to be right for that to work.
We have a question about recommending snack cams. And I don't know whether you feel comfortable like doing brand names, but maybe if someone's considering getting one, some of the elements or that they should look for that, you know, that it would provide. Or are they that different? I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's just a matter of reviewing the features and picking one that feels right to you. I don't think we can recommend any specific brand because we haven't run a testing, you know, of them at all, or none that I know of.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there, just doing a research to see what it is appropriate with the type of technology you already have at home in regards to your Wi-Fi. When are you thinking about using it? Because there's some cameras that allow you, especially for those cat owners, to see your cats playing in the dark as well. So it really depends on how you're planning to use the camera and the features, ensuring that it works for what you're looking for.
And if it doesn't work, you can send it back and get another one. Okay.
Hopefully. Angie asked, what do you recommend as the maximum length of time for a dog, an adult dog, to be cradled?
I say during the day, because at night we all agree it's a different story, and most dogs will be able to be there 8 hours or more, depending on you know, some dogs like to rest longer periods of time. But during the day, if you have the option, I would say 4 to 5 hours and then give them a break. And then you can, after a nice break, they can go back for another chunk of time over there, right? Leaving the dogs in the crate for 8 hours, even if they are adults, I think it's a little too long for my liking. If you have no other option, then you can always work towards that goal. But my preference would be 4 or 5 hours.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, and I prefer, you know, once your dog is crate trained, house trained, and dependable, is starting to transition your dog into larger spaces like a gated room that you've dog proofed or whatever. So you want to think in terms of having a long-term confinement space as well as your short-term confinement space, which would be the crate.
That's a good idea. Here's a question. It says, we adopted a corgi a couple of years ago. He was kept inside the house and garage in his early days. Whenever we take him outside on walks, he would bark very angrily, seems angrily, although the tail is wagging, at other dogs. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes. We don't want other dog owners to get angry. How do we train him to stop the barking behavior and play with other dogs nicely? He is great with humans. Should we take him to dog training lessons?
I would say yes. Dog training is always going to help.
Yes. And there's also special classes for dogs who are reactive on leash, and also understanding, is it just that frustration and excitement because they're on leash and they can't go greet the other dog? So definitely.
Yeah. And to Michelle's point, it could be just the frustration, and then if they have seen that dog off leash and the dog is okay, then just teach them how to cope with being on the leash. It could be lack of socialization. Maybe the dog hasn't been around a lot of dogs, and then they resort to barking as their first decision. It's like, okay, keep them away. I don't know if they are good or bad. Then let's just bark, 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 right? So depending on how long the dog's been practicing this also, it's going to be how long it takes to modify the behavior, but definitely I think training would be the way to go.
Yes, and also consider that not all dogs want to play with other dogs. Many dogs are just happy to walk along with you, and then they get into this point where you've got the 6-foot leash maybe, you know, and they start to guard that perimeter. Don't come in here, don't come in this perimeter. So maybe, you know, really assess whether your dog wants to play with other dogs before you decide you want to make them friendly.
My 9-pound Chihuahua, he gets more aggressive the bigger the dog is. I don't understand. Anyway, here's a question. It says, my older cat was good at staying at home, but since my daughter adopted kittens during COVID, he wants to go outside. How do I keep him from meowing and wanting to go out?
Okay, well, let me address that just in a theoretical. You can't train a not behavior. You can't train an unbehavior, like not meowing, okay? You have to figure out, and we've been talking about this a lot, figure out other behaviors that replace the meowing. I'll leave it at that.
And understand why the cat is meowing. It's a form of communication, so they're trying to communicate something to you. With that particular question that we got from her, she said the cat wants to go out more now that the kittens are present. So if going outside gives him a break from the kittens, that might be why he's meowing. And if you don't want the cat to go outside, can you give that cat other options to get a break away from the kittens? Can you set up a different safe place, room, where the cat can go in that the kittens aren't allowed in for when he needs a break from the kittens?
Okay, and another option maybe would be, since we don't want the cats going out and wandering, which they do, whether you think they do or not, maybe get a catio, an outdoor enclosure for the cat.
Yeah, those catios are beautiful, and the cats really enjoy being over there, or training that cat to walk on a cat leash.
On a leash, yeah.
That's also doable.
Okay, Nancy says, since our 14-year-old dog recently passed away, we would like to adopt another dog from the shelter. I have kids, 13 and 10 years old. What's the oldest age dog that we can adopt that will be safe around our kids and can still overcome any phobias such as food guarding, etc.? So up to 1 year old, or does age really matter?
I think if the dog they are adopting has been living with children or with kids, because those kids are not that young, I wouldn't worry that much about the age. Of course, if you're adopting a 14-year-old dog, yeah, there might be other things going on, right? Aging and medical stuff. But if the dog is healthy, I would look more for temperament and a dog that has had the experience of living with children than focusing that much on the age.
Yeah, and think about what your kids want to do with the dog. Do they want to be really active with the dog? Do they like to run around the yard and, you know, they like to throw balls? You've got to have a dog that enjoys the things that your kids are going to want to do. So, and a lot of times you don't have that background, but you can kind of, when your kids interview the dog, you can see what that interaction is going to look like.
The positive thing is there are a lot of shelters that have foster homes and the foster dogs live with children. So finding an animal that has been living with children and having a positive experience and positive interactions is probably what I would recommend.
And I'm glad to see she's considering a shelter dog, because the shelter people know the animals, they've been in foster care, so they can talk to them about, you know, issues that the dog has or traits maybe rather than
A lot of shelters have what's called a foster to adopt program. So the foster adopts directly to the person. So they do get some background on the dog.
Yeah. Okay. Sue Campbell asks, thoughts on the use of CBD for anxiety or the Theramine?
I have no
I've heard a
experience
lot of, but I only have anecdotal information on that. I've heard a lot about CBD and how some people love it, some people don't, but I don't have real numbers. I don't know, Nancy or Michelle, if you have different things.
Yeah, and I don't have any experience with it. It could be that some of the universities, such as Arizona State, that has a cognitive dog lab, have done some work with this, but I think you'd have to look up studies to see what's been done.
Yeah, I think the industry is still too young, and there's no standard for how potent the CBD is or not, and it is all anecdotal at this point, whether it
Yes.
worked or didn't. So,
and one thing to look at is that the behavior is an off-label use for it. It's primarily been designed to work with pain.
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Eric says, our 1-year-old Havanese has gotten used to hanging out on the bed with her teenage daughter during classes and naps. At night, he has been in a crate on her bed or ours and whines if not on the bed. I think he meant a crate by the bed. She has started to have him outside the crate at night, so he will whine even in the crate. Any suggestions? I think basically he's asking whether it's okay for the dog to sleep with the girl. I think that's the bottom line. And my dog sleeps with me. I know there's pros and cons to that, but what do you guys think about that?
I agree. I definitely think it's a personal choice. I think if you can continue the routine where the dog is allowed to sleep with the human and the dog's not being destructive, and you're okay with that, then that's totally fine. I think that if you want to use the crate as a management tool, really determining in what situations you really want the dog to be comfortable in the crate. And it doesn't have to be sleeping at night if there's other options for the dog.
And something good has to happen in the crate, because something good is definitely happening when you're hanging out on the bed with your person. Okay.
That's true.
It's true. And it's like we talked before, they are creatures of habits. I've seen so many times those that were perfectly well crate trained, and then at a certain point in life, they started being allowed on the beds, and then it's really hard to bring them back to the crates if you want to, right? So you have to kind of retrain that if that's your choice. If you don't care about the dog being on the bed and the dog is not resource guarding, or sometimes dogs get cranky and they start growling or nipping at people when they move during their sleep. If you don't have any of those issues and you're okay, I don't see a problem with it. But kind of making a decision and not trying to have the dog sometimes in the crate, sometimes on the bed, because of course they're going to choose the bed.
Yeah, I would. We have time for one last question. It's from Janet. It says, we have new neighbors that we share a backyard fence with. They have a dog that barks and growls at our dogs, which sets them off. Any suggestions on how we can get them used to each other?
That's about a 2-hour seminar, but yeah, I like calling, first of all, if the neighbors are cooperative, teaching both dogs callbacks from the fence will help, so that you can cut off any more aggressive or vocal interaction with the dogs. So I'm a big fan of the 20-foot long line. You take your dog out on the long line and you repeatedly call them back for treats and toys and everything else from the fence until you can call them back from the fence when the other dog is there. I'm sure there are other solutions.
As with most things, it usually takes cooperation with the neighbors. That's not always possible.
And if you can't, for whatever reason, either because other neighbors complain or your neighbor with the other dogs is not helping, I would try and call the dog and keep the dog inside when you hear the other dogs are outside, and don't let them practice that, right? Because the more they practice the behavior, the easier that becomes the habit.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Maria, Nancy, and Michelle. I learned a lot today, and I hope our viewers did too. And thanks to those of you who joined us here today, and I hope to see you again in our next webinar. And I'm gonna throw it back to Erin for closing thoughts.
Thank you. Thanks, Joan. Thanks, ladies. I really appreciate it. Wonderful conversation and answers to a lot of our viewers' questions. If you guys are looking to help these organizations, just one last little shout out for our participants at the Humane Society Silicon Valley, at the Berkeley Humane and the Peninsula Humane. So you guys can check out them online and donate and give as much as you can or are able to. Or if you're looking into fostering or adopting, they have options there as well. So definitely check those guys out. But that's going to be it for us today. Check out our upcoming events we have on July 15th. It's our gardening What Went Wrong. I think that'll be probably a pretty popular one. So make sure you come and join, submit questions, and enjoy that conversation. And then on August 19th, we've added wildfire gardening. This is going to be a huge topic and something that's going to be really important, especially right now. It's this week. I know at least here in the Tri-Valley where I am, it's going to be upwards of 100 degrees. So that's going to be important for gardening and for pets. So make sure there is water available for your pets. And other topics that we have coming up is going to be tomorrow, our bookish event. That is our partnership with our Southern California newspapers. So please jump onto that. And then on June 24th, we have our drawing episode 2, Drawing Wildlife in Your Own Backyard. So please go ahead and register for those at mercurynews.com/events, eastbaytimes.com/events, or marinij.com/events. That's it for me. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday. Thank you again, ladies, and enjoy your guys' day.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.